Morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Welcome to the What's New in Business Continuity Management webinar. I am your host, Rosalind Norville, and I am joined by Aswin Kumar, who will talk you through, I'm sure you guys are very familiar with Aswin. So just to get started, we can start to roll through the content. So as I said, thank you for joining us. And Aswin is the Principal Product Manager for both BCM and OpsRes, which means that he is spanning both products and introducing some really interesting enhancements for those folks who are interested in operational resilience. He is also the primary product owner for BCM, and that's what we're focusing on mainly today. I'm the Senior Manager of Product Marketing, and I cover BCM OpsRes. And it says vendor risk because it's an old slide, but third-party risk management. And a lot of the features that we're going to start to introduce do talk to some of those better together stories between third-party risk management and operational resilience based on some of the regulations that we have going on in the EU. So I think this and the third-party risk management session that are coming up later this month may be interesting for a variety of people. So thanks for joining us. Just on housekeeping, as I said, everybody's automatically placed on mute. Use the Q&A feature to ask questions throughout the session because that part is saved for us and we can follow up as needed if necessary. Happy to have you folks chat, talk to each other, tell you where you're from, and just hopefully offer us with some encouragement in the chat because the features that we're introducing today are great. After the session ends, you might be prompted to fill out a short survey, and we appreciate any feedback that you give us because they use that to create future sessions. So as noted, the new risk applications and updates are now available in the ServiceNow store, whereas the family releases are Xanadu, which is due out in September. The risk applications and products bring our features to market a little bit early. So everything that we're going to talk about today is indeed available in the store today. So I'm going to walk you quickly through a few of these. Obviously, today we're going through business continuity management. On August 13th, we have risk management. We'll talk about those enhancements in a separate webinar. Again, the 15th, we'll talk about third-party risk management. And you can see the rest of the webinars that we have. And I will find the link, but later in the presentation, there's a QR code. So get your phone ready. And there will be a direct link to all of these where you can sign up for each individual webinar. And we hope that you do. So as I said, we do have some new enhancements that we want to talk about today. And these are the specific ones that we're focusing on today. We can't talk about any futures on this call, but definitely make sure that you sign up for our roadmap sessions so that you can go over this. But today we're going to talk about some of the enhancements that were brought to the BIA and plans, some task automation around tracking your RTOs, your RPOs, your recovery tiers, and your dependencies. As I said, expediting those ITDR plan executions and updates of plans with dependencies from the CMDB, and looking towards minimizing the impact of a crisis event by providing greater visibility into your task execution and multiple levels of nested recovery plans, which enable you to execute plans across multiple levels within your organization. So Aswin's going to go through all this in detail. I will check over to the chat and the Q&A. And Aswin, if I could pass this to you for the demo. There are slides that follow this. We'll click quickly, so they will be in the recording. But definitely pay attention to the demo because Aswin moves fairly quickly because there's a lot to cover, but really exciting stuff coming. So Aswin, if I could pass.
Yeah, thank you. So let me share my screen and we can get started with the demo. All right, I hope you guys can see my screen.
I can.
Okay, and let me also bring up in PowerPoint. So These are the backup slides. We can share it with you guys after the webinar. This is going to have all the screens that we are going to go over today, but I'll just use some of them as a starting point, and then we can look at the application directly, right? So the first set of features that we want to look at in today's webinar is the enhancements that we have done for business impact analysis and the dependency assessments in specific under business impact analysis, right? So when you're doing a business impact analysis, there are two major outcomes that we're looking for. One is your recovery objectives, right? So you're looking at understanding what is your business process or your business services, recovery time objective, recovery point objective. What is the recovery tier of this item, right? If it is an IT asset, then you would be doing it for RTO, RPO, and then whether it's a crown jewel asset or not. And then the second part of the assessment is going to be focused on understanding what are the dependencies. It could be IT dependencies, it could be facilities, it could be vendors, it could be people, it could be data, any of this, right? The list doesn't stop there, but some examples. Yeah. So we are going to look at what are the enhancements that we did in dependency assessment. So when a business process owner logs in to the system and they are doing this dependency assessment, for example, when I'm saying these are the applications that are needed by my process, then you would be able to add those applications into a category called applications itself, right? And once you add that, you can build this kind of dependency with IT and non-IT dependencies. So this feature was existing. There are some enhancements that we brought to this particular functionality based on the feedback that we got from users like you guys. So that's the one we are going to start with. The first one is making this configurable, right? And then the second one is comparing the values between what is the business need and the related items, committed recovery objectives. And we can look at how this values get updated as well automatically, as well as whether it has to be done after a manual review. These are the functionalities. Let me quickly go into an instance to show you guys this part. So if you see here, this is an impact analysis that I have opened. Under the impact analysis, like I said, there are two different sections, right? So this is a business process related assessment. So there is a recovery time objective and dependency assessment, right? RPO is not here because I decided it doesn't make sense for me to calculate the RPO for a process, let's say, right? So I've decided not to do that in this particular template. So the enhancements are in dependency assessments. If I open this one, you can see there are different kinds of categories that I have configured. Basically, there are facilities, vendors, and then some IT related ones. And for applications, if you see, I have added some fields, that is description of use. How am I going to use this application? The user can fill this in. And then the user can see who is owning this particular application. If it is already there in the application record, which department owns this, who's the business unit responsible for this, etc. But if I go into a vendor category, you're not seeing those owned by a department and so on, right? So that is the configurations that we brought in. So these fields that you add here as columns is going to be configured for every category. And this can be something that is an read-only field that is pulled in from this particular record, or it can be something that the user has to key in here, right? So this is the first one that we did because many of our customers and users have said, it doesn't make sense for me to have an owner field for a vendor, right? But then I would like to have an SLA here that comes from the vendor record. Or if it is a location, I want to have the number of users or number of work seats that are needed in that location. So what we have done here is we have added the ability for you to configure what our columns are needed, and that can be edited from within this particular view or the list view. And we have also done is we have made sure these are all reference fields. So you can go in and you can look at the dependent item and you can go into a dot walk and you can get the details of what are the additional details that you want to pull in, right? So we can look at the details of that particular asset that we are looking at. And based on the asset that we are looking at, you will be able to pull in any of these, right? Supported by, or it can be any of these values, right? So I can add that, and that will get added into my record, basically. So we have made sure that is per category. That's the first functionality. The second one is when I add a particular application, the business owner who is doing this assessment can mention, this is my required recovery time frame, right? And as soon as you pull in the asset, what we have done here is we will also pull in, give me a minute, let me just rearrange these columns for better readability, right? So when I rearrange, when I add that asset into the dependency, the user can mention what is the required recovery time frame or RTO for this particular asset that I have added here. That is your Adobe Acrobat, right? So I'm mentioning this is 72 hours. That is the business requirement. But the committed RTO from that owner of that asset is more than that, right? So this difference is getting compared here. Basically, this value is coming from the latest BIA done on that application. That is this one. So we added the capability to pull in the latest business impact analysis, and you can add the filter, whether it has to be only the approved ones or it can be in-flight ones as well. So some of our customers said, doesn't matter if it's still in flight, the workflow, it should get pulled in. Some of our customers said it has to be the approved BIAs that needs to be considered. So we have added that part. You can, it's flexible. You can define what that is, and then that will get pulled in here. And you can see that the business requirement is 72 hours, but then the committed RTO from the asset owner is 1 month. So there is a gap between what the business expects and what, in this case, the IT owner or the application owner is committing. And you can also see that this is the ranking, or this is how the recovery tier of that particular application has been determined by the application owner, right? Or the person who did this analysis. So that is going to be pulled in. All these values are getting pulled in from the related BIA of that application, right? So you can compare this with your own recovery tier, and you can see whether they are in line, not in line, very similar to your RTO. And you can also look at the other ones, like this is the required data backup. Let's say in case you want to determine this, not many of our customers do this part, but in case the business wants to dictate this or business wants to specify what this is, right? You can specify that during your BIA, and you'll start seeing what is the committed RPO from the application owner or the IT team. So you'll be able to compare that as well. Even if you don't want to mention what the required data backup is, you can simply add this for reference. So when you're looking at the dependencies, you're not only looking at the items that you depend on, but really you're looking at the committed values of the recovery, in the recovery tier, the recovery time objective, and recovery point objective from the owner of that particular dependent item. So this has been added, and similar to adding other columns for related item BIA as well, this is getting added as an related item BIA. We have added it as a reference column, so you'd be able to go in and say, if there is an adjusted RTO, I want to consider that instead of the system calculated value, right? You'd be able to pull in any of this information from the related BIA of your dependencies. So that is getting taken care as well. So the idea was to provide an user interface for the user where you can see what is the business requirement and what is the commitment from the dependent items owner. So you will be able to do a comparison, right? What we have not done in this release is highlighting these gaps in maybe a red font or flag that will come out as a visualization in the next release. But in this release, you will start seeing those committed RTOs, RPOs, and recovery objectives getting pulled into the same screen here. So that is the first set of enhancements, right? And a couple of more points around this. So whenever there is an update to the BIA around these dependencies, they will get pulled in as well, right? That will be the latest value all the time. And you'd be able to configure a workflow where you want to send an email to the business owner saying there is a new BIA, there's a new recovery time objective or a committed recovery time objective for the dependencies that you have. So they are kept informed of whatever changes are happening, and they'll be able to do any adjustments in their planning phase based on what is changing in the recovery time objective, recovery point objective, commitments, and so on. And when you say update dependencies, this would pull in the dependencies from the CMDB as well as the updates from your related BIAs. So that has been taken care as well. It can be either automated or via a manual UI button. So when you click on this, that will pull in the latest information for these dependencies. So this is the dependency assessment enhancements that we have done. And we have made sure these values can also be configured in your PDF output, right? So that's been taken care as well. So that's the first set of enhancements on business impact analysis. So these are the screens that we went through. This was really taken for backup, but you'll be able to see all the enhancements that we spoke about here. And before I go into the plans, let me see if there are any questions, Ross, or do you want to take it up at the
There
end?
are two. There's
Okay.
one that says, is there the visual representation of the dependency mapping for an asset / CI? So is there a
Yeah.
visual representation?
Yeah, I can answer that. And then the next one is the list columns set by the logged user or set done at a template level. So it shows for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are the two questions. So basically, if you see in the dependency assessment, there are two views, right? So you can look at the 360-degree view. This is the view we added for showing all the dependencies. This is part of the business impact analysis. This is not the mind map kind of view that you're looking at, but you can look at all the different items that it is dependent on. You can go into the related list and you'll be able to see what those items are. So I can see what are those 4 applications that we are related to and what is the RTO of that, right? For example. And I can also look at the vendor that it is related to. This is a chart that we have configured, but you will be able to pull it up basically based on source, or you can draw the chart that shows any of these things, right? And you will be able to see the entire set of dependencies as well, the application, the servers, that is nothing but all of these different categories. There's a full list, and then there's a curated list or filtered list based on the capsule that you look at. So that's the visualization that we have added. In next year, we plan to release an dependency tree kind of a visualization where you'll be able to see all the dependencies in a tree view. And that will include the IT and non-IT dependencies, right? Currently, the CMDB dependency map shows you only the relationships between the CIs, right? We'll be enhancing that to show the non-IT dependencies as well, but that's not in this release. That's coming up next year, next year's release. That's the first one. The second one is, of course, the
Oswin,
columns that you set.
while you're there for just 1 second, someone asked if they can customize the columns for each dependency.
Yeah, so you'll be able to customize the columns for each dependency category. So you'll be able to configure this. It's not going to be a customization anymore, right? Like I was showing you here. So for applications, I've just configured some of these columns called owned by department, business unit, etc. If I go to vendors, it's completely different, right? Synchronized on status, etc. Right? So you'll be able to configure these columns. This can be done by an administrator, and that will be available for all the users. Okay. So that is the enhancements on business impact analysis. If there are further questions, we can take it along the way. The second enhancement is around the business continuity planning, right? So in the business continuity plans, there are a bunch of enhancements. The first one we will look at is the related items and the scope of the plan, right? Let's look at what this is, how are the things that have changed, and then we can discuss the other features as we finish this. So the first enhancement is about the items that are related to a plan. So earlier we had an UI where you'd be able to see the scope of the plan. Basically, these are the assets or these are the processes that are related to this particular plan. And when they get impacted, you can invoke this plan, right? That's what scope meant for us earlier. We're keeping that same, but the change really comes up is in the related assets, right? So when you add an item as an scope into the plan, it will get added as a primary scope item. That's the type of this particular addition that I've done. And then as I add this, the related assets of that particular item are pulled in. It can be pulled in from multiple sources, right? So if you see here, this is getting pulled in from a particular BIA. It's a downstream BIA that I'm getting it pulled in from. So in one of the BIS, these two were related, for example, and that's why this is getting pulled in. Same way for these applications as well, right? In this list view, where we have it as scope, you will start seeing all the assets. That is the primary item that I added into the plan, as well as all the related items and their latest BIA with what is their recovery time objective, recovery point objective, recovery tier, and so on, right? It will get pulled in, and you would be also be able to see that there is a new tab that we have introduced. This is called the asset dependencies tab, right? Here we have introduced multiple views, right? So the gap in this particular view was that when I look at multiple items that are primary, and there are two related items, right? So I don't know which one is related to these, or if both are related to both of them, right? So we just have a list of all the items. We don't know the connection between these related items and the primary items. Same thing goes with applications. I don't know which process is this particular application related to. Is it related to only one app, one process, or is it getting related to two processes that are part of this plan or services that are part of this plan? To address that, we introduced this view called asset dependencies. And the first view, we are calling it the hierarchical view, right? So basically, I added one item as the primary item in this particular plan, which has related items. There are 36 related items to this. And there is a red flag here, which says there is some warning there, right? So I can look at the dependencies by expanding this, and I can see that there is an application that my process is dependent on, and that has an BIA done on it, and it has a commitment of RTO of 1 month. So I have an RTO which is very aggressive from the business, and the application I depend on has a gap in what they have committed. Similarly, I'm looking at a recovery tier of mission critical for my business process, but the application I am dependent on has marked that asset as a non-essential asset or not a crown jewel asset, right? So I'll be able to see these details based on the latest values that is coming in from a downstream dependency. So I can look at where is this getting pulled in. Oops, sorry. You'll be able to start seeing where is this getting pulled in. This would be from a downstream dependency of a BIA, which BIA that is. Similarly, you'll be able to see for all of these, as and when there are recovery time objectives or commitments filled for these assets that are dependencies, you would start seeing those here. And based on a comparison, we will flag this as, there is a gap or no gap between the dependencies and the business process. And this can be replaced with a service or a service offering. You'll be able to see all the dependencies and the business requirement. That's the primary item of the plan. And you'll be able to see if there's a gap that getting flagged off. So that is the hierarchical view that we introduced, right? Now, some of our customers and users said, this is a great view, but we really want it into an table, right? Not in a hierarchical view, very similar to an Microsoft Excel table. So for that, we introduced what we call as the list view. The same data has been expanded into this. It's not a hierarchical view, but you'll start seeing accounts pay receivable as the first primary asset. And this is the latest BIA of that. It is repeating because I have only one in this case. We'll look at adding one more. you will see what's the recovery time objective, what is the recovery tier, and these are the related assets, right? And if they have an, let me see if I have any. Just give me a second. Okay, this one. So I can look at, this is the application that I'm dependent on. The application has a recovery time objective of 1 month. Recovery point is here. What is the required recovery time frame? And then where is this getting pulled in from, right? This is coming in from one of the downstream dependencies of a BIA. That is why this asset is getting pulled in as a related asset for my particular process, because it is connected in this particular BIA somewhere in the downstream. So that is the BIA for that, and you'll be able to dot walk based on any of these BIAs or the related asset or the primary asset and add more values or columns to this particular view, right? So we have made sure that is available as well. So that is the view where you can see the primary item and the dependent item and the commitments around the dependent item in one single view. So that is your list view. If you'd like to see per primary item, you can look at this view as well. So the second set of functionality is the primary scope and the related scope. So if I add another primary scope, this is how it will look like. So I can add that. And you'll see that payable got added as another primary item, right? It's going to take some time behind the scene to pull in all the related items to this accounts payable. Once we have all of those getting pulled in, you'll start seeing those get updated here. And when I go to the asset dependencies, I think still taking time. You should start seeing two things, right? Just give me a second. Let me see why this is taking a bit of time. You'll start seeing two primary items and everything under those comes up in there, right? So that is how you will be adding and multiple primary items. We will look at it in some time as and when all the related items are pulled in, right? So that is how you will be adding two primary items into the scope of the plan. Just give me a second. It is still getting pulled in. Okay, so adding a related asset, the experience has been changed as well. So when you add a related asset, you will have to pick a primary item from this plan that is already existing. So in this case, let me pick accounts payable, right? And I can add any of these related items into the plan. So that's how you will add it. So in essence, what is happening here is you cannot have a related item without it being tagged to one of the existing primary items in scope, right? So we have made sure that is the condition here. So that will be a change going forward. For all of those data that you have already created in your plans, that will get migrated into the latest version. We have made sure of the migrating the existing data. You will not be losing any of that. The linking will happen with the existing primary items, and all the related items are getting moved, and you will be able to start using this new view. So here, if you see, there are 24 items added under accounts payable. That's the second one that we just added, right? You'll be able to see the related items under that like this. So you'll be able to see all the primary items as level 1. And wherever you need to expand and view the dependencies, you'll be able to view it in the hierarchical view. Or you can go into the list view and see what is the related items. You can sort by any of these columns, which are like the normal functionality on any list view. So you'll be able to do any of this in the asset dependencies. So that is the second enhancement in the plan. In the business continuity management, this is specific to plan scope and how this is handled. And one more thing before I move out of this one. So when we delete a particular item from the scope, it will remove all of those things that are related only to this if there is an application that is related to two of the primary items, that will still be there. And the entry for whatever is remaining will be there in your asset dependencies. And here you can see what are those 24 relationships that will go with this primary item, right? Because these also got created, and that's why it was taking some time for us to look at that. So once it's removed, you will start seeing that the primary item is gone. All the relationships that it got created because of adding that is also gone. So this is how we have handled the primary scope and related items in the business continuity planning phase.
I think a couple of the questions will help clarify a couple of things for the audience, if you could take a
Okay.
minute to look at those.
The related asset could have a different RTO than the primary. So the related asset may not be critical. Does that warning stop you from? No, we are just doing it as an informational purpose. So this warning doesn't stop you from moving forward with the planning phase, right? It's only a flag that is raised because in most of the cases it has to be aligned. We understand in some cases it can be completely different as well. So that is exactly why we have also introduced what is called as a required recovery timeframe, right? So your RTO may be immediate for your business process, but when you're doing your BIA, you can specify something different. So in this case, what I have done is I've done this as 72 hours. It's not like 15 minutes, right? For this particular asset, what is the requirement from the business? And that will be compared. So this is one of the features we added to address that point. But even otherwise, because of this flag, it doesn't mean that I cannot complete my plan creation or go with an exercise that will go ahead. If a primary asset A is impacted for plan PA, the primary asset has related asset which is not impacted. It's also that we create event. So the related assets and the related plans, the way that get used in the recovery tasks is, and how that will get pulled into the events is, if the plans are getting invoked by any of the tasks, right? So if you look at this, I have a related plan here. And if I want to invoke that task in one of my recovery tasks here, let's say uh, activate a related plan, and I'll be able to say, this is the plan that I want to activate, right? So I'll be able to add that. And if there are no validation errors, it will get added as a task, right? So when we are pulling in this particular plan, this is my master plan. There are related plans here. The way that it gets sequenced is based on the task that I create. And if I have a task that invokes a related plan, then the task from one, which is the task sequence that I am ordering here, that as well as the related tasks will get pulled in into the event, basically, right? And as far as the assets are concerned, it will pull it in both ways. It's not always only one way. And what you can also do is in the events, right? In the events, you would be able to mention what is the kind of asset relationship that you want to consider. So if I go into, just give me a second. Dependency. Yeah. So if you see here, I'd be able to look at the sources and I'd be able to mention what kind of dependencies should I be considering. So if you look at it, I've said I need to pull in the upstream dependencies as well as downstream dependencies from the BIAs, right? In this case, both will get pulled in. If I remove the upstream dependencies, for example, only the downstream dependent assets will get pulled in from the BIAs as well as the plans. So it really, we introduced this as a flexible configuration for you guys to define. You can define during my event which assets needs to be pulled in, and based on the assets that get pulled in, what are the plans that needs to be added. I hope that answers that question. So adding it for a loss scenario is very similar to what you just added here. There's no change in that part. We have the loss scenarios where you can go into a loss scenario and then you'll be able to add it as one of the related assets, right? So you'll be able to add the related assets in this model window. You'll be able to add whatever that is. So basically here, this is loss of business applications. When you create a loss scenario, it is tied to a record type. In this case, it is application. So when you click on add, all the applications are available for you to add it into that particular loss scenario. So that has been retained as it is. Yeah, so here the other related items based on the CMDB, or can we add it at a plan level, right? So like the dependency configuration that I was showing for events, there's one for plans also. In plans, I'll be able to mention what are the sources from where I need to pull these dependencies, right? I can pull it from, let's say, for example, the CMDB or from BIAs. So I do a BIA, I define what are my downstream dependencies, or I have the CMDB. I need a superset of all of this, right? I can define this as the sources from where I need to pull in this related assets into my plans. That is number one. Number two is when I go into the plan, I'd be able to see these buttons here, right? So what I can do here is also I can build those related items or relationships during the planning phase. Let's say for some reason, my CMDB doesn't have all these related assets and dependencies captured, or I'm not doing a BIA on all my assets, right? I directly go to a planning stage where I have a common recovery objective for all my critical applications and processes. Let's say it's 8 hours, right? So I'm going to start with planning, which is the minimum stuff that is needed. So when you start off something like that, you'll be able to go in, you will be able to add the primary items to the plan. And then once you have added the primary item or primary scope, you can click on related items. You can pick what is the primary item, and you can say, what are the related items that I want to add for this, right? And here I'm building that relationships in the plan itself directly. So I'm not picking it up from a BIA or from the CMDB. So I'll be able to add it here. And if I look at the asset dependencies, right, and here there are columns that would mention what is the primary source, right? And for whatever I added manually, you'll start seeing it in the plan, right? So these got pulled in from the CMDB, some of them got pulled in from the downstream BIAs. This I added now. So if you have that added manually, this is where you will be able to see where did you guys add that? And if it is coming from a BIA or from the CMDB record, from which record is it coming from? Where are these two things connected, right? The related asset to your primary asset. So you're seeing a lot of columns here because this was the minimum set that was required by most of the customers. You would be able to manipulate or configure these things, right? So you would be able to delete the ones that you don't need. You can keep the minimum ones, you can add additional ones, etc. So that is the view. All right, so that was the enhancements in asset scope. So the next one is the recovery tasks. In the recovery tasks, we introduced automated tasks, right? So the DR tasks can be automated. Not all of them, but some of them you might be able to do this in an automated fashion. So what happens in a typical task creation before this releases, it would be tagged as a manual task. This field you wouldn't have seen. We have introduced it now because we introduced automated also. By default, when you create a task, it will be manual, and you will be able to assign it to a particular user, right? So I can go in and I can say this is manual, right? And I'd be able to say task, whatever the details are for the task, I can fill that in, and I can also assign it to a particular owner, right? So I'll be able to add one of the users as the owner and create the task. Now, what we have done in this release is there is an ability to automate the task instead of assigning it to a user. When I say this is an automated task, I'll be able to pick up what is the flow that needs to get activated. So these flows can be designed from your flow designer. Once you have added these flows, right, and you save them, you will start seeing what is called as variables. So these are the variables that are expected by the flow. So for every flow, the variables will be different, right? Let's say, for example, if the flow that you want to invoke is to basically, update a record in the system, then you can add that. So you need what is the status that needs to be updated for the task and what is the work notes that needs to be added to that event task, right? That you want to update. If it is a task that is to check one of the Azure server's health, for example, then you might want to give the details of the Azure server, like IP address or admin or credentials, etc. So the variables will change per flow and based on the asset that you're trying to link with the flow. Once you have provided that, you will be able to see this particular section here that says assignment details, and the owner field has changed to backup assignee and backup assignee group, right? The reason we have added this is when we activate the plan, this is an automated task. It will not get assigned to any user. It will activate this particular flow using these variables. And if the task fails, right, we will send an email notification to the backup assignee that the automated task has failed. Do you want to go and check the task manually? They will be able to intervene. They'll be able to go into the task and finish it manually so the entire exercise doesn't come to a stop. So they can still complete it and the exercise can continue. And later they'll be able to make any corrections to the automation or the flow that has been tagged here or the variables, whatever was the cause, and make sure that in the next cycle or the next exercise, it is automated task and it is not getting assigned to a user and they don't have to log in. So that is the functionality that got added for automated tasks. The next one is the planned duration, right? So if you see here, earlier we had something called as completion deadline, which was a drop-down field, right? And the user was able to select only a set of predefined timeframes. So like 30 minutes, 1 hour, 1 hour, 30 minutes, 2 hours, etc. But customers had also got back to us with requests on, we want to specify specific timeframes like 1 hour, 30 minutes, 30 seconds, or 1 hour, 35 minutes, right? So what we have done is we have made sure that the completion deadline has got changed to planned duration, and this is the format in which you can mention. For every task, there can be a different duration that you can mention here. And this is going to be used in your comparison when you execute the task in an exercise. So this is the expected time frame in which this task has to be completed. What is the actual time frame and what is the gap or the delay, if there is a delay, right? And when you capture the actual value for the completion of the task also, it will be in the same format and we'll be comparing this and those reports will be available in your exercise. So this is the enhancement on the recovery tasks specific to automated tasks, the backup team, and then the planned duration. The next one is the tagging of the tasks to the assets, right? So earlier, all the tasks in a plan were tagged to all the assets in the plan. So basically, if I have 3 tasks, all these 3 tasks were tagged to all the assets in the plan as well. So that is what we have addressed here. So when you go into a task, you will be able to see a flag here that says tag assets to none of the assets. So this task, let's say, is a prerequisite task, right? So it should not account for time taken into any of the recovery of any particular asset. So I can say this is none if I want to treat it like that. If I want this to be counted for all the assets, right? If that is the logic with which I need to go, I can say tag this task to all the assets. Let's say if this takes 60 minutes to complete this task, in the recovery time frame for every asset, that 60-minute will get added. Or I could say specific assets and I can pick which ones am I creating this task for one or multiple of them. And if it takes 1 hour, it will add 1 hour to both these asset recovery time frame, the actual time frame that is needed to recover them during the exercise. So that is how you can tag the task to specific assets or none of them, in which case if the time taken to complete that task will not be counted in the exercise, or you can tag it to all the assets. In that case, it will get added for all of them. That is how the tasks are tagged to these different assets going forward from this release. So those are the enhancements in business continuity planning. Let's see if there are any questions. Otherwise, we will move on to the exercise part. So these
Just
are
one
the
question.
screens that we went through. Yeah, just give me a second.
What is adding
Yeah.
related to these for a loss scenario restricted to just primary and assets?
So the loss scenarios, adding the loss scenarios, assets to the loss scenarios is been restricted to the dependency type. It is not restricted to just the primary or the related assets. So what we will be doing going forward is if you add an asset in the loss scenario, that will get added to the scope as well. So it will reflect back in the scope, but we will not be restricting it based on the feedback from you guys. But if this is a requirement, we can work it out as a configuration going forward. Yeah, so just give me a second. Let me go into the UI and sorry. What we meant by that is when you go and add a particular asset into the loss scenario, which is not there already, right? So as an application, if I add, let's say one of these, right? And if this gets added here, that will get pulled in as an primary scope item into the scope itself. We will be adding that here. We will not but restrict it as it has to be one of the assets from here. This is what we have planned in the upcoming release. But if you guys need it the other way, so that it has to be restricted from the primary scope, then we can add it as a configuration to you guys. I hope that answers that question.
Awesome. I think that's most of the questions that have come in so far.
That is the ones. Okay. All right. So now that brings us to the last enhancement set. That is your exercise part, right? What are the enhancements in the plan exercise? Let's look at those as well. So let's pull up an exercise. All right. So during an exercise, you will be able to add an asset or a set of assets as part of it, and you will be able to see the plans related to those assets getting pulled in, right? And if you look at, I mean, we touched upon this briefly. So if you go into the configuration, you'll be able to say, what are the kind of related assets that we want to pull into the exercise. And I have selected everything here, right? Upstream, downstream, all of that. But you will really be able to select those. And then you can say which ones I want to include, which ones I don't want to include. Am I going to add only the related assets from the plan that I select, or am I going to add only the primary assets? Or is it also going to pick up all the related assets from a related plan, right? And I'll be able to pull that information from all of these. So you can configure that, and on top of it, you'll be able to add it manually as well. You can add individual assets into this. Once you have added, the related plans are pulled in. This is one way of adding and scoping the exercise. The other way to do it is to add the plan and the related assets get pulled in. And the tasks also get pulled in, right? So either you can start with the assets and the plan and tasks are getting added automatically, or if you know the plan that you want to exercise, just add that in, and the scope of the plan and the tasks in it will get added into this automatically. So those are two ways to get this added. That is the configuration to see which related items should get pulled in. And then there is an update dependencies. Before we start off the exercise or a set of tasks, you'll be able to update and get the latest assets as well. So let's say I created an exercise, I parked it in a draft stage, right? It is not started yet. I created it today, and tomorrow somebody went and changed the relationships in the BIAs or in the plans or in the CMDB. They added something new as a dependent item. They removed something which was already there, right? So when I start this event, I want to make sure that I have the latest of these relationships considered, and that is what is the scope of the exercise, right? So I'll be able to set it up as an automated update, or I can say this is going to be via manual action, that is update dependencies. That will update these related plans, the assets and the tasks, and then I can start this particular event. So that is the first enhancements on this one. The second set is we discussed that the task can be tagged to the assets, right? So that is the impacted assets that you see here. Based on the task being tagged to the assets, the total time taken for the asset will be calculated. So each task has a time calculated for completion of the task, right? And then you'd be able to see what is the total time taken for one particular asset at a given point in time. So I can pull up any of this and I'll be able to see. I'll just give it a second. This is my asset. These are the plans related to it. And this plan, let's say, has multiple tasks, and I can see what are the tasks related to my asset and how am I calculating that particular time taken for this. So if this has multiple tasks, in this case, it's related to many different assets, right? Based on this tagging, only the tasks that are related to my asset here, that is accounts receivable process, will get accounted for in the roll-up, and that will be the required time actual or the achievable that is going to be calculated for this particular actual time taken for the plan as well as the asset that we are looking at. So that is the roll-up part. The second one that we did is on bringing in a new status for the tasks. So when we are executing the task, we earlier had work in progress. That's when this task will get assigned to a particular user. And then the user can say, I have completed the task successfully, right? That means this task will get completed and the next task in line will fire. The user can also say the task is incomplete. I want to close it as incomplete. So there are some errors or there are some problems in completing the task fully, but then I don't want to stop the exercise, right? The next task should get fired and the exercise should go on. So that is why we kept this particular status. And the third one that we introduced was because many of our customers and users had got back to us saying, if a task is failed and moved to a failed status, the entire exercise should come to a stop. I should not proceed with any further steps in the exercise unless this is clear, right? So this is getting parked as closed failed. And what this will do is the next task in line will not be assigned to the user. That will be held, right? As a predefined task. It is not going to be assigned to the user. Once this moves into a failed status, the user can go and verify this and they'll be able to look at the recovery team, they'll be able to see whatever is the state, etc. And then they can re-trigger this for an execution again. If something has to be set right, some properties in a server or some configuration has to be changed, you'll be able to change it and you'll be able to say re-trigger this as a manual task. This will again move into an work in progress status, right? And that team can pick it up again. They can finish this and then they can say, I have completed it as closed, and the next task in line will get opened up for activation, right? So if you see, this became closed complete and this became open. So once this moves into a failed status, the next one in line will be still in pending. It will not become opened and will not be assigned to that particular user. So that is the closed failed status that we have introduced. The task can be completed successfully, then the next one will start. The task can be closed as incomplete, then also the next one will start. The incomplete task, number of hours added to that will not be rolled up to the asset. If it becomes failed, it completely stops the further execution of all these steps in that exercise. That is the new status and new workflow that's been added to the event task in an exercise. I think there are some questions we can take that up. Can BCM light role engage in completing a recovery task? Yes, we will be able to add an light user as an recovery team member. Basically, the recovery team members are users who can update the task records, right? They'll not be able to edit the entire event record, but individual tasks that are assigned. For example, this user, they'll be able to edit only this particular record. They'll be pulled in as an, if they do only this, right? They will be added as an BCM Lite user. So those are the main enhancements in event tasks. So if there are further questions, we can take it up. Okay, there is a requirement for adding the link to the community. I think we can add the link for the recording, and yeah, Ross can work on adding that PowerPoint as well, which has all these
Yeah, if you don't mind
screenshots.
just shooting me a private message with your email, I can send that over to you, but it will be in the community, which is the ServiceNow community, and it will be under our on-demand webinars in the GRC section. So we always keep those in our events blog post that I believe I linked to before, but I will link to if it's not at the end of this session, but I think it is.
So
I
there's
believe
one
there's a
more
link
question
2 slides down. One more question.
There's one more question on that, and then we can just take that up. So basically, if this is an open task, right? So the first thing is one of the recovery team members assigns it themselves, and they can close it as complete, or if for some reason we want to proceed with the exercise, but this task is not complete, you will close it as incomplete, right? If you do that, this would still trigger the next one. Basically, if you see, this becomes open, right? But if I go in and say, sorry, there is an invalid update on this. So, but if I go in and say this is a failed closed, then the next task that is pending will not be opened up. Basically, it will stop that. So this is that interim stage where you want to fail this particular task, but want to proceed with the next one. That's the closed incomplete one. Closed fail will stop the rest of the flow. I hope that answers that question, Nicole. Okay, I think those were the major enhancements that we wanted to discuss with you guys today. And to just go back to
Great.
the slides where you have the QR code and then the links. These are the ones.
Yep. So I'll just let you know that the community is the links there. That is the risk area of our website in number 1. To watch any of our recordings and demos, you can go to our YouTube channel, and then to register for more community webinars, you can see that in that QR code there. I also put in the chat the direct link to the overall community, and then the pathway to what I would consider, and if you move to the next slide, Oswin, I would consider that probably one of the best places that you can find for risk in ESG events. We try to keep that updated on a regular basis. It's updated, I think, every Friday by one of my colleagues, and you will see as many webinars or in-person events or any sort of opportunity that you can get to see risk or ESG commentary, whether it's, as I said, live or in person. So if you want to bookmark that, that's probably a good bookmark to have, because that's where we try and promote things. And I think there's only end slide. Is that right? Last one, if you want to just Move over? Okay, great. Yes. And this is the interactive series in the webinar. So if you want to sign up for that QR code too. But otherwise, as I said, the links in the chat are probably the best. If you have any further questions, please reach out to us. Couple of thank yous in the chat, and there's one more question that I will get answered after the call. So thank you so much for your time, Oswin. Very much appreciate your time today, and thank you everyone for joining.